Tuesday edition, and we have our analysts in the house, Mr. Yemi Daniels. He is a social commentator and also a political analyst. You're welcome, Mr. Daniels.
Yeah, good morning. Good to
You're
be
welcome,
here.
welcome to the
Oh,
Red
yeah.
Tuesday Code
Oh,
Tuesday.
wonderful one, honestly.
Mr. Daniels, like we always like to do with you, tell us, what are you thinking about our Nigeria, our policies that has been making the rounds from last week to this week? We had the Senate, we had the economic, the CBN. How does that pertain for our nation and our policy?
Well, thank you very much. The one that actually bothers me the most is the new CBN policy. We are actually in between the devil and the deep blue sea. In this circumstance, there seems to be nothing that the CBN can do except for what it has done. And I just hope that it will be well managed so that we do not go the SAP way. You understand? And I was trying to, I think I want to do a research on how Iran survived. And maybe Nigeria can learn, because at the time Iran could not sell crude oil anywhere in the world. And Iran is a lot better for it now. Maybe we could learn borrow a leaf from Iran. And it will help us a great deal. But I tell you the truth, this policy may not be the best for us.
Wow. Okay, all right. We're starting off on that note, and we will go into the papers. On my beat, I have the New Telegraph, the Daily Sun, and the Daily Trust.
And I have the National Mirror newspaper, I have the Daily Times, and of course the Business Hallmark this morning.
Okay, anyway.
Okay, this morning we'll begin with the National Mirror newspaper, and it says, EFCC freezes Fayoshe's account as governor threatens litigation. We have more of that story on page 2 of the National Mirror newspaper. And above that story, Naira slams at interbank market exchanges for 250 Naira to a dollar as CBN clears 4.02 billion Naira forex demand backlog assures on policy impact. We have more of that story on page 2 of the National Mirror. And just beside that story, federal government, National Assembly disagree on constituency project. More of that story on page 12. 13 feared killed as gunmen invade Lagos communities. TUC, Serap condemn proposed life pension for National Assembly leadership. Minister evades web summons over MTN's 330 billion Naira. We have more of that story on page 11. Forgery plot against Saraki, Ekweremadu thickens. And finally, Nikki Toby, former Supreme Court Justice, dies at 75 years. These are the stories trending on the National Mirror newspaper. You have the next paper.
I do. I have the New Telegraph, and it leads with this. Nigerians reject immunity pension for Saraki Dogara with 2 riders. TUC, Serap Balarabe, Junaid, others kick. FG may arraign Senate President Ekweremadu today, and that story is on pages 2 and 5. And then we also have the pictorial there. Civil servants protest to demand removal of Finance Minister Mrs. Kemi Adeosun. That story is on page 5, and with the pictures showing the protests, them carrying placards and also blocking the entrance to the ministry yesterday with cars, left outside. And campaign funds, EFCC freezes Fayoshe's account. Governor accuses Buhari's wife of corruption. That story is on page 3. And on page 42, Ize Iyamu emerges Edo PDP Guber candidate. Abia North, no election in Arochukwu. Isu Kwato says witnesses. That story is on page 41. On page 10, Jonathan's aide, Judafa, gets 500 million Naira bail. And on page 3, Biafra, Kanu drags Justice Soho to NJC. And Forex, Naira slumps to 280 Naira per dollar on interbank markets. With the riders, CBN appoints 15 FX primary dealers. And Senate queries CBN BOI Airlines over 500 billion naira intervention funds. That story is on page 2. And on a lighter note, on page 6, too many selfies could speed up aging. I think based on that, I'm going to grow very old. I don't like to take too many.
Oh my God.
Very interesting.
But yes, I'm happy about that. Anyway, be happy with me. So let's go to the papers.
Let's
Mr.
go straight to
Daniels.
the papers.
Immunity. Life immunity. Reject immunity. Life pension for Saraki, for Dogara. Mr. Daniels, what are our representatives thinking?
Yeah, well, it's funny. And it's a testimony to the kind of system that we run. And it's somebody called the kakistocracy, the government for the elites. In a country where the ordinary Nigerian can barely speak, some people who are the highest paid legislators in the world, still think that after serving, they deserve to be paid forever. You understand? And they will tell you that they are trying to protect the institution of the National Assembly.
What institution are they talking about?
You understand? They said that because there is no immunity, that's why the president is being victimized. That if there was immunity for him, there wouldn't have been all of this going back and forth. But having said that, the question we should also ask ourselves is this: what actually gave birth to all of this? Why are we in this kind of a mess? As it is today, the Senate President and his deputy are up for arraignment today. And you want to ask, are we creating more balance or imbalances in the system? We have a situation in our hands where the economy is in the worst of states, and our politics is quite imbalanced. And by the time we now create this kind of a shock, we undermine the legislation, and we put ourselves in a more terrible mess. Now, what it means is this: there will be no oversight functions. Peradventure, let's assume that federal government succeeds in dealing with Saraki and Ikweremadu. Rightly or wrongly, we don't know if what they said they have done was wrong. What they have actually done it. If they did, the federal government has the right to prosecute. Well, look at it again. If you prosecute, will we still have balance in the National Assembly afterwards? It's easier to deal with Saraki, yet we have not been able to deal with it. In a country where ethnicity matters a lot, trust me, the Igbo man sees it as an affront against the entire Igbo, because Ekweremadu is up. The lower house there will show some sympathy. You understand all of those things, and the question is that, are we ready for all of those things? Will we be moving forward? I gave an allegory this morning. I say it's like a man who married a woman that has three adult children, matured. And you came on board. You have not bought the loyalty of those boys, and you're calling the shots in the house. First, they don't like the fact that you came on board. They wish their mother was widow forever, so that they could have her to themselves. And you came on board. You said to the first child, now as from today you wash my car. The next one, as from today, you clean my shoes each time I wake up in the morning. And you give all kinds of instructions. And these are the same people who never wanted you there. Now, will you be able to be a good husband and a good stepfather? And that's the question.
All right. On that point, we're going to continue with the newspapers, and we just hope that really there's a rethink, and that for once in our polity, for once as a people, the Nigerian state is taken into consideration, and one Nigerian, just one, is enough to make a difference. So we'll move on now to the Daily Times newspaper, and it says, overtime allowance protest, civil servants demand illegal, says federal government. There's a lot of write-up right here, but we won't have time to take that. If we want more of that read, it continues on page 6 of the Daily Times newspaper. And above that story, Senate begins probe of 120 billion naira aviation intervention fund, summons CBN governor, airline owners, Olufemi and Chris Emeto, all in Abuja. The Senate on Monday commenced inquiries into how a $40 million intervention fund was spent. We have more of that story on page 6. Senate rules federal government now to arraign Saraki Ekweremadu for forgery today. The federal government will today arraign the Senate President, Dr. Bukola Saraki, and his deputy. And more stories, two-way quote, interbank FX market begins. Federal government to revoke road contracts sealed in dollars. That is a very good one. We have more story on page 12. 5.1 billion naira fraud. Dudafa gets 500 million naira bail. More story on page 12. How NNPC paid itself 6.5 billion naira subsidy in 3 years. I almost bit my tongue there. And finally, EFCC has frozen my account. Shouts Fayoshe. We have more story on page 21. You have the next paper.
Thank you. I have the Daily Sun newspaper, and it reads, Saraki Ekweremadu faced trial for forgery, and with 2 riders were yet to get any notice, Senate President and Deputy. APC waits into Senate presidency. APC waits into Senate presidency face-off. That story is on page 6. On page 42, angry finance ministry workers, lockout minister demands her sack. That story continues on page 42. EFCC has frozen my account, says Fayoshe. That story is on page 11. I can hear him all the way from
I can see his face.
From here, yes. On page 42, retrenchment. Pengerson threatens shutdown of oil sector. In Abia North rerun, Kingsmen testify against Ohabunwa. That story is on page 9. And on page 20, Edo Gilbert, how Ize Iyamu won PDP tickets. That story is on page 20. And finally, from the Daily Sun newspaper, is a pictorial of a laughing president. Yes, President Muhammadu Buhari back at his desk after his vacation in London yesterday. That's all the story we have from the Daily Sun newspaper.
Yes, Mr. Daniels, this story that really, 2 stories here. Federal government revoked road contract sealed in dollars. This is one of the stories. And of course, the agitation, the latest now, the cry, the hue in Abuja, civil servants demands. Now the federal government says it is illegal. Allowance is not part of remuneration. But before the present minister came on board, they did say they used to have all these allowances, travel allowances, inconvenience allowances, and what have you. But since she came on board, all those allowances have been cut off, and you're making the demand. But now we're hearing that it is illegal. How do you balance that now? How do we balance it?
Well, I do not know what it meant by being that it was illegal. I wouldn't expect any government to pay emoluments that are not constitutional, especially in a time like this. I really don't understand why some allowances will be paid over the years and they were always illegal. So I think it brings to question that what were the presidents and the ministers of finance at the time? What was the rationale for paying all of those allowances? But you also cannot tell. They may have been there because this is Nigeria, it's a banana republic where anything happens. All kinds of unconstitutionalities are the order of the day in Nigeria.
Okay. So the other story, federal government to revoke road contracts sealed in dollars.
Road contracts
sealed in dollars.
Well, it's actually not. It's not in the best interest of our country.
Why not?
Some other foreign currency.
Yes, do it and so give you awarding contracts in dollars. Well, some people will say for stability's sake because dollar is a more stable currency. And I tell you, well, the more we do that, we are sending the wrong signals. For crying out loud, you can't tell the private sector not to do the same.
Okay.
If you're telling us don't transact in dollars, the federal government should not transact it. So for that reason, they may have taken a decision not to do the dollar deal. So I think it's a step in the right direction. That's what you're asking.
All right. Well, moving on. Yeah, I have my final newspaper. It is the Daily Trust newspaper, and it says Naira now 280 Naira to a dollar as flexible regime begins. And federal government announced civil service 10-year policy. That story is on page 4. $700 million oil deal. Judge's absence stalls Yakubu Mokare's arraignment. That story is on page 4. And from the editor's choice, I didn't order hijab use, says Arebeshala. That story is on page 8. And bailiffs ready to serve Saraki Ekweremadu personally. That story is on page 7. And finally, from the Daily Trust newspaper, debt. Court cedes Nikon investment to Amcon. That story is on page 14. And that's all we have from the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. Anyway?
Yes, the final paper on my page this morning is the Business Hallmark newspaper. And it says, until foreign investors return, there is no recovery, says Ajiagbu. And experts project Naira to fall to 300 Naira per dollar. More stories, rising inflation wrecks growth projections. And just below, MTN listing blow orders to follow. Aggressive cost cutting to boost UBN's profit. And finally, on the Business Hallmark, banks charge stamp duty on savings account. This story continues on page 15 of the Business Hallmark. These are all the papers we have this morning on this particular segment. Yes. So we want to thank our guests for coming, Mr. Yemi Daniels. Thank you so much. But just in 1 minute as we go on this segment, what is your take on all the stories you've heard this morning? I really want your final reaction.
Well, it's a tough call. It's a tough call in Nigeria today, and it's quite gloomy. And we need to, the best we can do in this circumstance is to put our differences aside. And let's rally around and just make a difference.
Are we matured enough to do that?
That's a big question. That's a problem. And that's what leadership is key.
Okay. So we want to thank you for coming this morning as usual. Thanks for always been there. You know when we're calling you. Thank you so much. So that's Mr. Yemi Daniels, is a social commentator as well as a political analyst. We have doctors in the house. It's going to be a very, very interesting Tuesday on AM Chat. Stay with us when we return.